Hey everyone, this is Eric Bond, the founder of Beat The GMAT, and welcome to tonight's webinar. It's called Non-Traditional Candidates, Articulating the MBA Fit. And this is a very special session that we are co-hosting with our very good friend, Kofi Kankam, the co-founder of Admit Advantage. And this session was actually designed by Kofi and his team specifically for the engineers, the entrepreneurs, the nonprofit people, the doctors, anyone that is sort of perceived as a non-traditional candidate. And if you've come to an Admin Advantage webinar in the past, you'll know that Kofi and his team are pretty amazing when it comes to these kinds of presentations. So we're delighted to be joined by Kofi and his team for tonight's webinar. Should be a very good one. So if you're not familiar with Admin Advantage, I'm not going to say too much about it. I just want to say one remarkable statistic. 92% of Admin Advantage clients gain admittance to one of their top choices of schools when they work with an Admin Advantage expert. 92%. That is an incredible track record for an incredible firm that is dedicated to helping people get into their dream schools. That's one of the things I love about Admin Advantage is they have an amazing staff, clearly an amazing experience for their clients, and the track record to prove it. And one of the smart guys behind Admin Advantage is Kofi, as I've mentioned. He's the co-founder, along with Eric. And I'm sorry, what was the third co-founder there, Kofi?
Eli.
Eli, yes, thank you. Really, really great guys. They've established an incredible firm, and I highly recommend after this session that you check out admitadvantage.com. Great website, lots of resources available for free there, as well as it's a great place for you to check out some of the services that they offer. So Kofi, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and the firm a little bit more, but welcome again to tonight's webinar. Thank you so much for co-hosting this with us.
Oh, thank you. I actually was just going to let you speak indefinitely on and on about Graham. It's very, very exciting to hear that. No, thanks for hosting with us. We love working with Beat the GMAT, obviously. My name is Kofi Kankam. I am one of the co-founders of Admin Advantage, and one of the reasons why we do this webinar, and it's so near and dear to our hearts, is that I was, and Eric, actually, both of us were atypical candidates. You know, I was a neurobiology major who had done some stuff in the startup world, had a wonderfully successful startup till it failed, and I was looking, go to business school, and sort of different from your typical banker or consultant. So I understand some of the challenges and sort of, fears and concerns that some of you who are sort of off the beaten path may have, and I'm here to tell you, in this day and age, it's actually a little bit better to be atypical, although you need to look out for certain things. So, and we'll talk about that, but I'm really pleased to be here. I will not keep you too long. As a Ohioan, a native Ohioan, you guys know who the best football team is. I won't get into that, but I do understand that people want to watch the debates tonight, so we'll try to wrap this up in an hour and let you guys get back to picking who you want to vote for. Okay, so let's keep going. So we'll go into a little bit about the company. I'm not going to speak that much about it. All the stuff is online. You guys can look that up. I think, Eric's done a great job sort of introducing us, and I really can't top that anyway. But we'll talk a little about the company. We'll look at sort of, classify some of the 8 non-traditional candidates and some of the things you can work on. We'll then get into some case studies, and we will basically give you some options and next steps if you want to work with us, and if you sort of want to go to more free events, and then we'll open up for Q&A, and we'll go probably till about, I guess, 9 or 9:10, as long as sort of we can fit everything in, and then we'll sort of set you free and let you guys go from there. So our company basically is an admissions consulting company that works with candidates all the way from inception, i.e. people deciding that they want to go to school, to people basically getting accepted into school and looking to determine which school they should go to and how they should structure financial aid packages, or if they're waitlisted, et cetera. One of the great things that happens in our company every year is we end up going to a lot of going away parties, and we've been going to more graduations also. So it's really nice to sort of see people through the full process, and we remain committed to do that. Our company is known in this space, I think, from what people have told us, as being very structured. We really believe in a structured process. All of us are former sort of scientists, engineers, etc. And we really believe that when candidates are applying to some of these schools where their acceptance rate is sub 25%, yet 70% of the applicants are admissible, it's really important to figure out how you want to differentiate yourself, and following a really structured process that taps into your sort of professional, academic, and personal attributes and stories and experiences is really vital to sort of to packaging you and building your candidacy in the best way possible. So we really believe in our structure, especially if you're coming from a big company or an industry that sends a lot of candidates to school. And even if you're coming from an industry that doesn't, which is where a lot of you are probably tonight, that's even more reason why you want to make sure you're pulling out experiences, leadership characteristics that will be relevant in your sort of future field of business. Okay. We've also been really blessed to have a lot of diversity on our team, and obviously there's ethnic diversity. That's not that interesting to me. I'm more so interested in diversity in terms of career. So we have people on our team that are all alums of top-tier schools, like your Harvards, your Whartons, your Stanfords, your Columbias, or NYUs, etc. But more importantly, there's diversity in terms of what their professions are. So we have a lot of people that have come from finance, a lot of people that have come from entrepreneurship. We have a speechwriter for Joe Biden. She's probably getting a bit ready for the next debate, or the debate between Biden and Ryan. We have tech entrepreneurs. We've got real estate people. We've got a couple of people from Teach for America, and I think maybe one person from the Peace Corps. So we're trying to sort of match the diversity of our candidates who are coming in, as well as sort of obviously international diversity. Our company is built on 3 tenets that we literally hang in our office and we really believe in. One, experience. So literally everyone in our office, including our intern, although she's obviously just graduated from college and not business school, but everyone's gone to a top-tier school. And all of our consultants are people that have graduated from all these schools represented at the bottom. We really believe in that. We want people that have been in your shoes, that have sort of experienced the challenges that you've experienced, as well as people that have been on the other side of the table. So people that have been either former directors or associate directors of admissions, or people that have been involved in the admissions process either as an alumni interviewer or second-year interviewer. So pretty much all of our consultants have both of those shoes that they can wear, and we think it represents you guys well. We're very client-focused. We really believe that's why we do all these free webinars. We really believe in sort of getting close to our clients to become our pretty good friends. It's great sort of emotionally just to build that kind of company. That's the kind of company culture we want, but it's also really good in terms of making all of you feel comfortable such that you produce your best product, such that you really reveal important, critical, nuanced stories, personal stories that we can figure out how to weave into your application. And then the last tenet's obviously performance. So none of this matters. All this is not for naught if we're not getting people into top-tier schools or working to help them get into top-tier schools. So we've been very fortunate, very blessed to have a really strong track record. It's part of the reason Princeton Review has chosen to work with us. I think we're probably the only company they work with in all of the United States, and we just got Canada recently. But we help place people in really good schools around the world, and this is kind of just a snapshot at the bottom. Okay. So the 3 of us, we're kind of a 3-headed monster. I guess I'm the only person with a crazy name. And yes, I do know that there is a Kofi Annan. Kofi Annan actually was my late uncle's high school roommate. So unfortunately, there already is a famous Kofi. I guess I'd be the 3rd because Ghana had a famous president named Kofi. So I'll take the bronze medal when I can get it. But all of us worked at Accenture. Paradoxically, Eric worked at GE Capital. He sold a software company. We're all Wharton guys, class of '04. Eric was very involved as a student admissions rep. He also went to Brown undergraduate where he majored in engineering, and he served as a Brown and Wharton interviewer. I worked at a company called Net2Phone, which is a predecessor to Skype, way less successful. So I guess I've got bad timing, but actually it was a great experience. After working at Accenture, I went to Net2Phone, and then I got into the software business, sold a company. I went to Harvard College for my undergraduate degree in neurobiology, stayed and got a master's in education, and both those things were sort of atypical. And then basically was a Wharton teaching fellow and ran Wharton's biggest conference, the Whitney Young Conference. Eli Kennedy, very similar background, went to Howard undergraduate, did well at Howard and as well as at Wharton, and basically was helping me run the Whitney Young Conference. And we've got Rodney Morrison, who basically served as an associate director of admissions for Wharton undergrad and Wharton grad for about 8 to 9 years. Worked at Lehman Brothers, was the #2 at Management Leaders for Tomorrow, and basically now serves as the Dean of Admissions for one of the Rutgers, which is a state university in New Jersey. So this is kind of the brain trust, but again, our consultants are actually represented by a variety of different types of schools. Okay, so that's that. That's all you're going to get on the company. Anything else, you can sort of email me or look at the website. Let's delve into non-traditional atypical candidates. So the first thing is we need to determine who they are, right? Who are you guys? And a lot of you probably fit into this mode, right? So they're lawyers, artists, people who are doctors. These are people you literally see in your class, right? They're people that do research, medical research, or people that do technology research. Atypical certainly are older candidates, typically people that are over. If you're looking at full-time MBA programs, let's say anyone who's 30 plus is considered really an older candidate. That's someone atypical. Obviously, there are a lot of military. I don't even know if military should be sort of atypical because there's so many military people in business school. But, oops, sorry, should have shut down Skype. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. Military people, very important constituent. Teachers. That includes sort of TFA people as well as regular sort of public school teachers, et cetera. This is sort of a really nice sort of snapshot of who a lot of the atypical people are in business school. All right. So in terms of non-traditional candidates, the thing you should realize is that business schools, which is really good for you guys, and it's probably a little bit different than when I applied Gulp like 10 years ago, but business schools are now sensing the value of having atypical candidates. So back basically at the turn of the century, and it sounds like my grandfather, but business schools looked at atypical people as people that work sort of in the dot-coms, right? Those are atypical people. But in the last sort of like decade, business schools have really broadened their definition of what they want their alums to be doing. And so now it's a lot more of a leadership training academy as opposed to just sort of a corporate capitalist making factory. And in return, because it's, sort of in response to that, they've started accepting and really seeking out different kinds of people to really enrich the classroom environment for sort of the more standard people, more standard applicants, okay? So when I say non-traditional is becoming the norm, what I mean by that is if you added up all these different groups here, it's almost becoming like close to 50% of the class is basically falling within one of those realms. And I'm not saying it's ever going to be 50%, but there's a really high minority percentage of people that are basically non-traditional candidates pursuing their MBAs, okay? The one thing you've got to make sure is that business school makes sense for you. So a lot of people are going to business school because, we talk to some people every day because, everyone's doing it. It's the kind of school you can go to where all you have to do is take the GMAT or GRE, and you don't necessarily have to have have taken a certain set sort of classification of courses in college, right? And so a lot of people are attracted to it. It's great to look at the schools and say, oh, I'm making $70,000 right now. I come out within 5 years of coming out, I can make $250, $350, $400. So we see a lot of people that are going to business school, but the thing you've got to think about is, does it make sense for you, right? It is a huge commitment. It's a commitment in terms of your time. So full-year programs, you guys know, are 2 years, or you can do 1 year, especially in Europe. But even still, let's say you go to a typical 2-year program, your budget for going might be $85,000 a year, room and board, rent, et cetera, all that kind of stuff, tuition. If you add into it the cost of your lost salaries, let's say you're making $70,000 a year, that's $140,000 plus literally $170,000. That could be basically $310,000, right? Now, if you assume that you're going to make 25 to 30 back over the summer in your internship, you'll gain a little bit more. It won't be quite as expensive, but there are very few of you for whom going to business school is not going to cost you at least $250,000 in terms of like fees as well as lost income. So you've got to be very clear that it makes sense for you. Because to a certain extent, if you're looking to do something entrepreneurial after school, and you could be in a hole. So think of like Eric Bond and Kim, who they started this company, Beat The GMAT. If Eric and B had gone to business school, between both of them, they would have basically been out, literally probably $500,000, and that may have made it harder for them to start their company because it would have had to service a debt that they would have accrued going to business school. So you really need to think about this in terms of where it fits in your goal. Even though Eric and me probably could have gone into any school that they wanted, you've got to think about it in that context, okay? Non-traditional candidates, be confident of the fact that you're bringing a lot to the table. You're bringing like different experiences, different contacts, different career goals potentially, but it's up to you to sort of articulate that. You've got to really paint a picture, and you've got to do your research on why business school makes sense, why a specific business school makes sense, and why your career is going to basically benefit from pursuing an MBA. So there are positives and negatives of basically not having a formal business education. And again, I was you guys, right? So I was a neurobiology major. Yes, I did go to a really prominent school, but I still was a neurobiology major. I couldn't read a spreadsheet if my life depended on it. I also pursued a master's in education. I can't tell you how many family arguments I had where my parents would say, what are you doing? Like, why are you jumping around? I'll tell you guys potentially a funny story about how my parents said I was going to med school. When I said, yeah, I'm going to Harvard, Harvard Ed, my mother, who's a physician, almost started doing backflips like one of the U.S. gymnasts, I guess the flying squirrel. And then when I said ed school, she almost like passed out. So in a bad way, she was not pleased with that. But in terms of sort of not having formal business education, the positives are, look, a large number of candidates are career changers. There are very few people that go to business school today that are willing to incur that cost and potentially incur the cost of not finding a job immediately when they graduate if they don't need it. And a lot of times the people that really need it are people who are switching careers, okay? Most business school students did not major in business. You'll find that consistently across the board. When I say business, I mean business. I also include finance and accounting. If you take those things out, you have a lot of English majors, a lot of physics, math majors, applied math majors, biology majors. Most people did not major in business, okay? Realize also that you are not competing with basically people that have, if you're sort of an atypical candidate, you're not going to be competing against someone who's coming from McKinsey. You're competing against people that fall in your bucket. If you're an entrepreneur, you're competing against entrepreneurs. If you're sort of a nonprofit person, you're largely competing against a nonprofit. Yes, there are different buckets. So there are different buckets for ethnicities, there are different buckets for where you went to college, different buckets for sex, but largely you're competing against people that have the same professional background as you. So don't worry about so much that you're not sort of a Goldman, McKinsey, or Google type person. You don't have to worry about that, okay? Admissions committees are looking for people who represent great diversity and help flesh out their class. They don't want a bunch of investment bankers. So you really don't have anything to worry about. Now, the negatives are you obviously don't really understand business. On the positive side, that's kind of why you're going to school, right? But we find that a lot of people that are coming from non-traditional or atypical backgrounds have a hard time describing exactly why they're pursuing their MBA, why it makes sense for them. And if you fall in that bucket, you need to realize that there's going to be increased scrutiny for you on why you're getting an MBA in a way that there isn't for someone who's coming from a more traditional background. Okay, and then if you're someone that is poets and quants sort of says, if you're a poet, right, and let's say you potentially don't do phenomenally well on your GMAT or your GRE, there's going to be concern about whether or not you can actually do the work, right? If you were more of a science major, if you're a math guy or woman or physics major, you're given a little bit more latitude. But if you were basically a history and English, a French, a literature major, you have to show and improve on your exams. You need to realize that, especially if you haven't sort of worked at a big firm after you majored that in college, you need to understand that you really need to demonstrate to the admissions committee that you can do the work. That is the first hurdle to getting accepted. Okay, so in summary, I won't sort of go through all this, but basically realize a lot of people don't have the traditional background. If you don't have the academic background, consider taking supplemental courses in finance, accounting, stats, and economics. Do it at a local college. Do it at the best school you can afford in terms of time and money. Consider doing it online. Like UCLA is a great program. Often there's 6 to 8 week courses, and get A's in those courses. Don't take those courses if you're going to slack and get a B+. That's not good enough. Okay, and again, I'm specifically speaking about those of you, which is probably most of you, that are looking at going to top 25 schools, right? you have to basically do well academically if you're building a supplemental transcript, okay? And then think about your background. Really focus on areas where you have business skills and leadership. So, for example, if you are a military person, yes, you probably are not reading spreadsheets, but you probably have great communication skills. You've managed people. You've been able to sort of make decisions under duress. You've been able to sort of process large amounts of data in a limited period of time. You've been able to sort of be innovative and adaptive. Potentially, if you've been deployed, you may have very great analytical skills. If maybe you're a military officer doing intelligence, and you often see that, especially with like some of the Israelis that go to business school. You've got all those leadership characteristics and all those traits which are really relevant for business, right? Like most businesses want great communicators, people that are innovative, people that have managed other people, people that are able to make decisions, limited information. You have all that. You've demonstrated all that. You've just done it in a different context. And it's really your job to take sort of those contextual skills and make sure they're relevant for business school. That's your job as an applicant, okay? Alternative work experience. So a lot of you guys have different kinds of experience, right? So, and I totally get that too. I worked at Nectaphone. No one ever heard of it. I had worked at Accenture, but that was a short tenure because, you know, I wanted to do different things, right? So just realize that if you have different kinds of work experience on the positive side, again, trends are in your favor, and you see it even in the GRE. When you guys see that the GRE is being increasingly accepted, what that means is that business schools are looking at candidates who are typically looking at other types of graduate schools, and that means they're opening themselves up for different types of people come in. That's a really positive thing for all of you, okay? Realize also it makes you different. I can't tell you, every day I have conversations with people in certain classes. I have sort of, you know, Indian IT male conversations. I have sort of, you know, investment banker conversations, you know, typically sort of, you know, white guys went to really good schools that work on Wall Street. I have basically conversations with people that are doing sort of marketing, that work in Procter & Gamble, etc. So if you are not in that group, that's a great thing because there's so many applicants coming from that area, right? You have to basically speak about the unique perspective that you're going to be able to bring to the classroom. That's really, again, your job. And also, it'd be easier for you, while it may be harder for you to sort of articulate exactly why you need an MBA, once you sort of get over that hurdle, it's easy for you to articulate that you really need an MBA. So if you're a candidate that went to Duke and majored in economics, and now you sort of work at Bain, it's hard for you to sort of, and you want to sort of stay in strategy consulting or do corporate sort of business development, those guys and women have a hard time sometimes articulating why they need an MBA because they already sort of went to a really good school. They already majored in something business related. They're already working in the business related field. That is not as compelling as someone coming from a place that's totally different. Well, maybe they didn't, you know, they majored in neurobiology, or, you know, they didn't go to as prominent a school. Maybe they work in sort of the Peace Corps, and now they sort of want to do, you know, CSR, right, corporate social responsibility at a major Fortune 100 company. It's easier for them to articulate why they need an MBA, and it's more plausible that if they do not get an MBA, they're not going to get that career opportunity in a way that that Duke person that already works at Bain may not be able to sort of really express, okay? On the negative side, alternative work experience, you've got to pull that thread between where you are today and where you're going to be. You've got to make the admissions committee members feel comfortable that you're going to interview well in terms of getting a job, that you're going to have the right focus, and you're going to basically run faster to get up to speed when you graduate, right? Because if you're looking to sort of start a job, let's say in finance, let's say in consulting, and you're competing against somebody that majored in business and worked at a consulting company before business school, the admissions committee members need to feel comfortable that you're going to be able to compete effectively with them when it comes time to interview and get that job, okay? And again, we talked about projecting your skill set. Obviously, you know, you've got to really be clear about articulating why you want an MBA, why now, and how it ties into your goals. And then we talked a little bit about the opportunity cost. I think that's fairly clear. Now, again, the advantages, you've got to focus on your transferable skills. Think about that military example I just gave you. You've got to basically, you know, give context for your performance. So business schools, which is really good for you guys, business schools don't really care what you do as long as you do it the best compared to your peers, right? So if you are a track athlete, we had a guy in my class, Steve Holman, who was America's #1 ranked miler. He went to Georgetown, ran, you know, went to like 2 Olympics, went to the Goodwill Games, etc. He was a great athlete. Now, he'd never worked a corporate job in his life, right? Maybe besides an internship here and there, but he was someone that clearly was at the top of his game. When he got his recommendations from like the U.S. Track and Field Committee head, et cetera, they said, this guy's the best we got. And they spoke about his tenacity. They spoke about his discipline. They spoke about his ability to sort of be innovative. All that stuff that's relevant for business, and they identified him as a sort of best of class, top in his field area, and business schools were very attracted to him, okay? And that's part of the reason he got an award. And now he's working at Vanguard in a pretty senior executive at a pretty rapid clip, all right? Make sure you have a story down. Make sure you're realistic. So it's funny, I tell people this, and they don't really believe it. We worked with a guy a couple years ago who essentially, I think he did sort of nonprofit work. Worked at, I think, at the Peace Corps, actually Kiva. He worked at Kiva. And he basically said that when he graduated, he wanted to sort of move to Hong Kong and start a hedge fund, right? Now, this guy majored in, like, English. He worked at Kiva right after school. He was not Asian. He didn't speak any sort of he didn't speak Chinese or Japanese. He didn't speak, he didn't speak Vietnamese. He spoke nothing, all right, except for, like, maybe English and Spanish. And he said, immediately after school, I want to start a hedge fund in Asia. That's not realistic, right? And so he lacked credibility. And so we spent a lot of time shaping his message, saying, look, it's okay to say that you want to do that eventually, but how about you start with getting a job in finance? How about you start with going to school and maybe taking a supplemental course in Chinese while you're in school, and then basically working maybe for finance in the States, maybe getting transferred to base maybe a Shanghai or Beijing office, and then basically when you're there, you work there for a couple of years, build some contacts and relationships, and then you branch out maybe with a couple of your peers and build a company. Much more realistic, okay? So you've got to make sure that you're doing that. You've got your own narrative down. And notice I'm laying out steps. It's funny. It's kind of like the Republican refrain, hope without a plan is not a strategy, right? Hope is not a strategy, okay? And so saying that you want to sort of be this amazing corporate leader without laying out your steps, that's not a strategy to get there. And you have to basically lay out the steps and identify the strategy in order to make it work, okay? And obviously make sure it's worth going to school, and we talked about that a little bit. All right, so the age factor. Every day we get this question, am I too old? Now you see one of our older candidates on the right. He was really smart. I'm a joke. That's a joke, actually. We didn't work with him. He worked with one of our competitors. I'm kidding. There's no thing about being too old, okay? So the key is sort of finding the right fit. I mean, there was a guy in my class at Wharton. There were actually a couple of guys, including the athlete I just mentioned to you, Steve Holman, who were in their 30s. There was a guy who was 42. There was a guy in the class above me who was just I think it was 46, 47, something in that range. So you can never be too old. Also, there are other types of programs. So in addition to the full-time program, you have the part-time program, which you do while you're working. You have the executive MBA. That's for people who are sort of 8 to 10 years plus out. So while a full-time may not make sense for you, there are other types of programs you can do that match your experience level, right? I'm sorry this keeps cropping up. I'm not going to close it because it'll be distracting. But basically, if you're looking to go to school and you're a little bit older than the median, make sure you articulate why business school makes sense and why now. That is your job. Realize that there's more scrutiny on you if you are 8+ years out. If you're that 30-year-old who's applying to business school, you should kind of be clear on why it makes sense for you to get an MBA as someone who's 25 or 26, because you've been exposed to more stuff, right? The 25, 26-year-old is typically writing about stuff that, she may want to do, but she may not have been exposed to sort of like hedge funds. She may not really she may not know as many people. So there is increased scrutiny. Business schools will not tell you that, but I will tell you that. You've got to be very clear about how it fits for you, okay? And they're also going to think about hireability. So to be totally candid, like if you're going to school at like 40 and you're saying you want to go do investment banking on Wall Street at a big firm, it's probably not going to happen because those firms do not hire. You don't see like 40-year-old analysts. You don't see often 35-year-old, associates. That's the position you have when you graduate from business school. You don't see like in their mid to late 30s. So you've got to be realistic about that. You've got to basically make the admissions committee members feel that you've done your research and that you actually can find a job in that area. Make them feel comfortable that you're not going to bring down their job placement numbers, which sounds insane that they think about that, but they do think about it, okay, because that's partially how they're evaluated. Too young, right? So you've got this young whippersnapper on the right. I have no idea who she is. I think Eric worked with her. But essentially, a lot of schools do request work experience. HBS is this amazing 2+2 program. It started a couple years ago. So those of you that are seniors, you apply as a senior, you get in, you defer for 2 years, you go work for 2 years, and you come back and do your 2-year degree. Yale's got a Silver Scholars program. There are other schools that have sort of that similar kind of effort. But you've got to really be clear about what your value is you're adding in the class. Because even with 2 years of experience, so those of you that are working, if it graduated, let's say in 2011, and you're applying now, you're going to go to school with 2 years of experience. You've got to think about how do you compete, how do you compare with someone who looks just like you but is applying with 3 years of experience, and we'll start when they've got 4. That's your job, right? And there's always a concern that you're not really going to know your real career focus, or you're really not going to have a great sort of orientation in business school if you go too young. So just realize that this is unlike sort of college. I know a lot of us are sort of high achievers. We want to get done as quickly as possible, but there's no need to go super early. You're not in a contest. One of my best friends in the world, when I went to college, we actually went to MIT and we're in the same fraternity, same chapter. He basically went to business school. He went to Harvard he was about to turn 24 when he started, okay? And he, got out, did well there. Now he's got a good job, and this is like a while back, but, I talked to him occasionally, and he like repeatedly says, he's kind of interested in what we're doing. He basically told me, he's like, I wish that I went to school a little bit later, because when I got to school at such a young age, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I didn't really necessarily know how to interact with my classmates. They were very nice to me, but I felt like a lot of them didn't necessarily see my value because I was 23 years old and they were like 26, 27-year-olds. And so I didn't have as much experience in them. I didn't have the right kind of networks. And he's like, I didn't interact with the professors in a way to sort of nurture a long-standing relationship because I basically was like still out of school, just coming out of school. So really think about that when it makes sense for you, okay? Just FYI, I went to school when I was 26, and that was a really good age for me. And that's kind of when most people typically go, right? So find programs that are a good fit for you. Make sure if you're sort of an atypical candidate, as I mentioned a couple slides ago, if you are a poet, you got to knock out your exams, right? If you are a science guy, make sure you've got really well-written essays, okay? You basically have to address your weaknesses. And if you were sort of in this realm, like too old or too young, it's really helpful, and it's not necessary, but it's really helpful if you speak to admissions committee members when you can. So try to build relationships with AdComs when they come to your city, when they do sort of the information sessions, when you go visit the schools. Begin to get their cards, begin to talk to them, begin to cultivate sort of, if you're like a spy, it's called cultivating assets, right? Begin to sort of cultivate relationships with people that run different clubs on campus that you want to be part of. So if you're, an entrepreneur, reach out to the head of an entrepreneurship club or the entrepreneurship club sort of prospective student contact. Begin to do that kind of stuff so you can build advocates. You can figure out how to shape your application. There are people that can put in a good word for you, especially if you're waitlisted, et cetera. Spend time doing that. Okay, let's take a look at a few case studies, then we'll sort of get to questions. So these are all people we work with as a company. I haven't worked with all of them personally, but here are people that we've worked with that I think will be pretty instrumental in understanding what you can do and kind of what the challenges are. So we had an environmentalist who basically wanted to sort of get into sustainability, okay? So by the way, we're keeping this blind because we've done this a couple times, and people have like found out. We've sort of gone over their background. So now we ask all of them, but we do keep it blind, right? So I won't give you all the details. Basically, this person went to a school in Pennsylvania, pretty big school. They did pretty well there. The scores were very solid. They were obviously involved in an environmental club, and they played club soccer, okay? So they had 3 years of work experience when they were applying. Their industry was sort of helping companies understand their carbon footprint. That's what they were doing as a job. And basically, functionally, they were helping with sort of operations. It was like a startup. Operations in a startup, overall strategy. They managed different relationships and projects with different kinds of entities, including schools/universities. And they're, generally sort of personal background. They're from the Mid-Atlantic, and they basically had, a couple of hobbies. Nice person to date, I suppose, but not super interesting necessarily, right? Not that different, in some respects in terms of their hobbies. Okay, so here's what we liked. Oh, we saw this person travel to 12 countries. That sort of was something we filed away, right? And they basically had done these trips where they basically were helping sort of educate some of the citizens of these countries on how to sort of live in a more sustainable manner, right, with less damage to the earth. Okay, they had done a lot of work with sort of the homeless, right, which is sort of interesting, and also they were thinking about having their recommenders be their current managers. Not that atypical, right? Challenges. So this person did not know, what experiences to include in his essays, right? He wasn't clear sort of how it fit. And he also was coming from an industry that didn't send a lot of people to business school. You don't see a lot of people coming from. Today it's a little bit different, slightly different, but a couple years ago it definitely was kind of novel, right? He didn't really know which schools fit with him. He hadn't managed really any people, so that was a bit of a challenge. And his work experience, he actually, he applied with 2 years and he was going to start with 3. So basically he only had sort of 2 years of experience. That's pretty short, right? About a year or two short. Goals. So this person was not looking at poor schools. He definitely was looking at schools that were schools that essentially were really challenging, top tier schools only. So that was really important to him. Harvard, Berkeley, Cornell, short-term goal management consulting, long-term goal, he wanted to sort of lead an NGO, okay? So in terms of what we did, so we sort of went through his background and tried to find critical stories and experiences which showed leadership characteristics which would be relevant from the business school, right? So he had basically managed some projects, multitasked his projects. He basically had done some pretty high-level communications. He'd done some strategy work, which we thought was really relevant for whatever industry you go into, whether it's trying to get clients, trying to figure out how to price products, trying to figure out which products to release. That stuff was all relevant, all right? We basically said, let's build this guy. Since this guy wanted to stay in sustainability, right? He wanted to run a global NGO, probably focus on that. We said, let's lean into that a little bit. Let's identify this person as an expert in that field, okay? And then we basically, in terms of Cornell specifically, that was really sort of important because at the time Cornell was one of the only institutions which actually had sort of a sustainability program and a focus, right, partially in conjunction with the undergraduate school. So we said, let's do this for Cornell, and let's also carry this sort of throughout, okay? And then basically we had the recommenders who really focus on specific items, projects, key deliverables he basically had put together that identified him as sort of a best-in-class person amongst his peers. And he ended up getting into all of his schools, and he finished up at HBS. Okay, so that's one example. Okay, so this was an IT consultant. We've all been there. I guess actually that was me, although this is not me. But this guy basically wanted to become a venture capitalist sort of leader. Okay, so this person went to a major California university, did not do that well, did not sort of light it up, especially in conjunction with the schools that he wanted to apply to, right? Had different positions within sort of the fraternity, took the GMAT a couple times, and basically, when I say 700 to 720, that was one score that was his best score. The rest of the scores were sort of in the mid to high sixes, okay? Now, this person did media consulting, which was interesting. Media consulting sort of focused on with an IT realm. So basically, they were sort of bringing that skill set, bringing sort of technology platforms. Think of like a Hulu, think of like sort of an entity like that. They were bringing that to sort of technology or media type companies, all right? 7 years experience, that was a lot of experience. And some people consider that a negative. I consider that a positive, to be honest with you. Had pretty strong operations, sort of P&L stuff, and basically I had managed just under sort of a dozen people, under 10 people, okay? All right, so this person also traveled a little bit, right? No community service, which made me bang my head against the table about 15 times and break out in tears. Was looking at sort of NYU, knew that basically in the short term they wanted to sort of work at like McKinsey. I think it's sort of, I want to say sort of it was Malaysia or Singapore, I can't remember which one. And basically eventually wanted to sort of either do venture capital or take over their business, which basically was, I won't call it a chain of restaurants, but it was a couple restaurants. It wasn't a Starbucks, but they had some they had, a pretty sizable business that basically this person was looking to take over potentially, okay? So challenges, I think it's clear. The GPA was not killing it, obviously. Um, they majored in biology. They did not sort of do that well in the quantitative courses. Had really kind of sat on the couch, so to speak, since business school, and since college, and really hadn't gotten involved in any major activities. And they kind of were a little bit dour. We sort of did some mock interviews, and I thought I was going to fall asleep. I had to take like 6 shots of like double espressos because they were so monotonous, so sort of unenthused about sort of their prospects, seemingly unenthused. Okay. So in order to build the supplemental transcript, we immediately had this person enroll in some supplemental courses in accounting, stats, and finance. They did all 3 of them. They had more time than you guys have right now. Those of you who are applying this year, they did this basically over the course of a year, which made things easier for them. Okay, we really sort of leaned on the advisors to have them really speak about this person's analytical skills and projects where they had to process large amounts of data. So we basically were trying to craft an argument that while this person was not really necessarily a great student, they were able to compete and do well where it really mattered, i.e. in the workplace. And that's a really unique characteristic for business school, unlike law school or med school, where you've got a track record, right? And so there's nothing more relevant to how you're going to do professionally when you're done with business school than probably what you've done professionally before business school. So you obviously want to show academic proficiency to make it through business school, but it's really a good thing if those of you that have done well professionally, that can really be a huge boon to your application, especially even if you have gaps in your sort of academic performance, right, in terms of not doing well all the time, okay? We basically drilled this guy doing multiple interviews and trying to sort of help him identify things about the school, clubs and activities and really courses he wanted to take where he could sort of get excited. And we sort of steered him to really talk about these things when he was doing his interview because we knew that he would sort of inherently light up more. Now, he was never going to be like I don't even know, like a George Carlin or, like a Jay Leno, super gregarious, etc. But he was going to basically be able to light up a little bit more. And so those of you who sort of know that you're a little bit monotonous or maybe personally boring, it's okay. Try to find those things which excite you because that will be very clear to your interviewer. And then we basically reached out to the media club. So we basically said, okay, reach out to the media club, begin to cultivate this asset as mentioned, and go to the media basically club events at NYU and sort of start to meet them, start to get to know them, and start to have them pulling for you and start to have them think about putting in a good word for you when you apply. All right. And this person got into NYU. Now, NYU is a really tough school to get into, okay? The mean GPA is about a 3.45, 3.5. GMAT, he's right there, but that's a big gap to overcome. This person was sub 3.0, right? But they happen to get into NYU probably by the skin of their teeth, but an accept is an accept, okay? And the last case I want to talk to you about is a physician, right? A doctor, essentially. Top tier U.S. school, yeah, moderate GPA, not great. Okay, not great. They took the GRE. They also had taken the GMAT, but that's not relevant. Took the GRE, did okay. Okay, had sort of worked in school, but a 3.0, I think it was a 3.17, someone that was just below a 3.2. I'll give this person credit, but that's not a great GPA for these kinds of schools. Okay, lots of years of work experience, including being in medical school, sort of doing the residency, which counts. Managed interns, right, from the Northeast, love rugby. Basically, she had basically worked her way through college. So we liked that, right? That kind of made sense. Had great community service and basically had recommendations from current and former managers. That's kind of ho-hum, par for the course, right? Looking at different programs with basically healthcare, that's HC, Wharton, Fuqua, and Vanderbilt. Initially wanted to basically do strategy consulting in healthcare, either a healthcare-oriented firm or basically working at like a McKinsey in the healthcare industry, and eventually wanted to sort of run a large hospital, right? Either a large hospital system, either a large hospital like an MGH, or be like the Frist family, Senator Bill Frist from basically went to Princeton. He was a senator, I think, from Tennessee. His family sort of had run some hospital chains that started HCA, right? So she was thinking about leading sort of in that direction. Okay? Low undergraduate GPA. Again, put this in context. This is for top 25 schools. A 3.17 is nothing to be ashamed about, but it is low. It is 0.4 off the mean for a lot of these top-tier schools. Okay? No quantitative work. Now, you could argue organic chemistry and biology, but that's not necessarily high-level mathematics or physics or sort of, finance or economics, okay? No business exposure at all. And basically not a really clear direction. I mean, this person was literally a practicing doctor when they came to us. She had no idea how to achieve her short-term goal, right? Or long-term goal, rather. So we basically work to sort of again, work on these stories and experiences showing leadership characteristics, okay? All of her sort of essays and sort of her interviews and recommenders all lean towards business. So her recommender spoke about how, she had helped with their practice, right? She was really good at sort of convincing patients to take their medicine. That's a sales job, right? Convincing patients to come into the hospital to take responsibility sort of for their health, all right? She was really good at helping sort of deal with the purchase and sort of navigation of which kind of technology that the hospital is going to buy, which drugs they were going to buy in terms of like when drug reps would come to the hospital. She's one of the people they met with, right? So there were certain things in her background, including making presentations to staff, including managing interns, which were relevant for business. You had to tweak it a little bit, but still they were relevant. And as we built up this crescendo, she wrote about it. She interviewed, when she interviewed, she talked about it. She had her recommenders write about it. It was on her resume. It kind of all fit together.
Hey everyone, this is Eric just stepping in for a moment. Kofi, if you're there, we just wanted to let you know that we heard a lot of static on your line. I'm going to unmute you right now and hopefully you'll be back. So, okay. Let me work with my team for a moment, folks, to see what's going on with Kofi. Appreciate your patience and just stand by for a moment. We're going to see if we can get him back on the line. Hey everyone, this is Eric. We're still working to get Kofi back on the line, so appreciate your patience. Please stand by for a few more moments, and we'll do our best to continue this presentation as soon as possible. Thanks so much. Hey guys, this is Eric. Just wanted to give you an update that Kofi is in the process of logging back in right now. So I believe he should be back in just a moment, but not sure what happened there. A little bit of a technical issue, but Kofi is relogging back into the session so we can wrap up and maybe have time for a question or two. So thanks guys for being patient, and um, yep, sometimes these tech issues just happen, and fortunately the BTG community is always so patient. So just a few more moments. Thanks.
Can you guys hear me now?
We can hear you just fine. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. That was exciting. Okay, we're on a backup. All right, so we'll go a little bit over. So I'm not going to get into this. This is fairly similar. Sorry about that, guys. I'm not sure what happened. Perils of living in New York City, I suppose. But basically a little bit on the offering. So if you want if you want sort of full service package, we offer that. It starts at $3,600. It's basically soup to nuts. You come to us without having done anything, and essentially we'll help you. If you want hourly help, that's if you basically have done some writing already, you feel comfortable, maybe you can get help from your friends and family. Basically, you can do that sort of on an hourly basis with a minimum of 1 hour. You're building 15-minute increments thereafter. A final review, which is pretty popular at this point, that's if you've done your entire application, you want sort of a really detailed once over on it, and we're doing that a lot, as you can imagine, with deadlines sort of coming up in October. That's something you may be interested in. We do offer a 10% discount using 1908, and actually we always like to be creative here, so we actually are offering a 15% discount. If you basically sign up and one of your friends signs up within a week, we will give you a 15% discount. So we'll do that manually. Just shoot me a note, both of you, or if you sort of sign up and you convince a friend to sign up later, we'll basically discount it on the second payment, because all of our payments are spaced out over time anyway. So that is a 15% discount for 2 people. If you basically just sort of, as a friend of Beat The GMAT, we give an inherent automatic 10% discount using discount code 190 on our website. You've got a ding analysis. If you were applied in previous years, you weren't accepted, you wonder what the heck happened, you want us to take a look, we will take a look at that. A ding is hopefully a term a lot of you are not familiar with, but that basically means that you are sort of not accepted. And then we've got a pre-application package as well. And that is if you're 6 to 9 months out and you want help with your application, we'll help you sort of figure out how to position yourself so that you can be the best candidate possible when you actually do apply. All right. If you haven't taken a GMAT, there's a 15% discount on TPR. You can, Princeton Review, you can use that from our website. We're on Facebook, Twitter, our blog, and we have a bunch of sort of fun things coming up. An office hour next week. Then we're going to go back into Stanford, back into Harvard. We're going to speak about writing compelling essays for our round 2 people. And then we're going to do a school fit recommendation selection webinar. And if you just want a free consultation and you've not had one, go to sketch.me/adminadvantage or shoot me an email at kkankim@adminadvantage.com or give us a call. All right, so let's take some questions. Sorry about the outage, but we improvise here.
Well, we're back, and that's the important thing. And for those of you who might have joined us a little bit late, we've been hearing from Kofi Kankam, who just went through a great presentation called Non-Traditional Candidates Articulating the MBA Fit. So I'm looking at my clock here. I think we have time for maybe 2 or 3 questions. And if you have a question that you'd like to ask Kofi, you can do so by putting your question right in the chat box area. Our team will take a look, and we'll have time for just a few questions here. So the first question that I see is coming from Jeff. Jeff is asking, what if you're an entrepreneur but haven't reached breakout success? What's the best way to present yourself to the admissions committee if you haven't really demonstrated the full success of your venture yet?
Sure. That's a good question, Jeff. I was actually a lot like you when I applied. So unfortunately for all of us, most of us are not going to be Mark Zuckerberg, at least at 28. And that's pretty typical. Most people applying to school have not been successful entrepreneurs yet, even if they are entrepreneurs. They haven't been successful. I would say that the most important thing is basically focusing on the skills that you've picked up. So you probably had to raise money. You probably had to set strategy. You probably had to hire people. You have to build products. Those are all valuable skills that you can bring to the table. I think combining that with lessons learned, reasons maybe why you weren't so successful, things that you think you can share with your classmates, maybe pointing out deficiencies in your background which precluded you from being successful, which you hope to pick up in business school, some of the training, and that was my situation as a neurobiology major. Those are all fine things. I mean, you're going to be given a lot of credit for just embarking on that journey. I would say that you obviously, just because your company was successful doesn't mean you haven't done some things well. So you probably want to look to maybe get recommendations from supervisors or clients or clients/customers, maybe investors if you've had them, people that can speak to some really good characteristics and traits and successes in your endeavors, even if your overall project or company has not gone well.
Kofi, I'd like to expand on your response that you just provided. So what about celebrating failure? And at least in Silicon Valley right now, or traditionally, failing in a venture is not necessarily a bad thing either. Is that sort of part of the lessons learned category? How would you treat that? Yeah.
Yes, that's a good question, Eric. That's a great follow-up. So I hate celebrating failure too much, but I'm joking. But all that said, yeah, I mean that if you've had a failure, that's okay as long as you can diagnose, and that can actually be a great. To be honest with you, you probably have had to sort of look in the mirror a little bit more and go through a little bit more self-reflection and have a little bit more to offer if you've gone through a failure than if you've had a great success. Because your success also doesn't necessarily mean that you were great. You may have been lucky, right? But if you had a failure, the key thing for you is basically really to literally write down all the lessons learned. Probably write down, firstly, things you would have done differently, and then write down, things that are in your control that contribute to the failure, things you would have done differently. Then write down lessons learned, and think about the lessons that can be extrapolated and shared with other people, not just the lessons that are relevant for your specific story. So look for lessons that be relevant for most of your classmates that want to do entrepreneurship, want to run their own companies, and build on that. And there are lots of essays. I mean, look, some schools ask these questions directly, like Harvard will ask this year, what's your greatest failure? Some schools, there are places you can weave it in. Like that's an obvious one. There are a lot of questions about, tell us about your career goals. You can weave that in. There are questions about introduce yourself to your classmates. You can weave that in. I mean, there's so many places to put this into your application. But as long as you have viable lessons learned, and the lessons are not just like raise more money, build a better product. I mean, they have to be somewhat nuanced and developed. I think you can actually be a great asset to your application. I had a failed company. We blew through, $1.8 million and had really nothing to show for it, except for some angry investors.
Well, I would actually say that maybe success that you were able to convince investors to raise that amount of money. So yeah,
that's true too. That's true too.
So here's one more question for you, and I think this is all we have time for tonight's session. It's kind of specific, but I think it's a good example here. Dave is asking, he says, I'm impressed with the results of the media fellow with the low GPA. I have a higher GPA in GMAT, but unlike him, I've never managed anyone. And I'm 30 years old. So how do I mitigate my lack of leadership with 8 years of experience? So is this a common scenario? And any thoughts on folks with more work experience but not so much leadership?
Yeah, that is fairly typical. Dave, remember 30 is the new 20. What I would say to you, this is a joke, but what I'd say to you is that you may not have managed people, but you probably have managed projects or managed tasks. And the reality is a lot of people applying to school have not managed people. Now, your problem's compounded a little bit. Your challenge is a little bit compounded by the fact that you're a little bit older. So you're not a 25, 26-year-old who's never managed people. You're 30, but you still have probably, if you're an entrepreneur, you definitely have managed. You've managed a company, you've managed products, you've managed tasks. Maybe you've, and that can also actually, to be honest with you, be more difficult in terms of management when you don't have direct reports, but maybe you have people that are resources that can help you, but they're not necessarily directly reported to you. So thinking about your powers of persuasion, your ability to communicate to them, your ability to sort of manage their time or manage your requests with their time, that can be a great asset as well. But I wouldn't be necessarily fully concerned about that as long as you probably have more leadership. Just to be an entrepreneur, you already have more leadership than you probably would think. However, the stuff that you're mentioning about sort of volunteer, that can be a challenge, and we probably should talk about that offline because there's some things you probably can do now in terms of maybe developing, individual, like developing maybe like a 4-week program where you can sort of like maybe teach like, I don't know, financial management or have like some kind of course you can give to maybe people in your local community. That can be like a set defined thing that you do that doesn't take a huge amount of time, but you can say, look, I funneled or I sort of taught 20 people and took them through fundamentals of like sort of balancing your checkbook, fundamentals of like money management, a little course I developed and did at my local library, and it was like four-week course. People went through it, it's done, it's defined, and it's out. And it's basically something that you can sort of hang your hat on that you accomplished that can help partially mask the fact that maybe you didn't do anything. You haven't been doing a lot of community service or extracurricular leadership outside of school for the last, 7 to 8 years. Okay.
Great. And Kofi, with that, I think we're going to have to wrap for today's session. We've been listening to Kofi Kankam, who is the co-founder of Admin Advantage, talk about strategies for non-traditional candidates. And, a lot of great advice, lots of great examples. Hopefully you took some notes. And we also will have a recording of this session in case you missed it. I just want to make one more reminder that Kofi and his team always provides Beat the GMAT with a great 10% discount on their services. And you can see that the discount code is appearing on the screen right now, 1908. A very, very generous offer to all Beat the GMAT members. And they also have this refer a friend unique promotion that's going on right now that if you bring a friend, if you sign up for Admin Advantage services and also bring along a friend to sign up, it's 15% off for you. So really, really excellent deal, one that you shouldn't pass up because it's not something that I see very commonly offered by the Admin Advantage team at all, this kind of steep discount. So Kofi, just once again, thank you so much for this great webinar tonight.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having us. We definitely appreciate it. Sorry we lost power for a little bit, but we came back just like Ohio State has come back. And all I ask that you guys know, every webinar you guys have been there, all I ask is that you pray for my Buckeyes. We are going to win the Big Ten this year, and we're on our way to becoming national champions for probably about 7 of the next 15 years. So I just want to thank you guys for that support.
And if you're a longtime Beat the GMAT community member who's come to one of Admin Advantage's webinars in the past, you'll know that this is the point of the webinar where I'm always sorely disappointed in Kofi for making some sort of Ohio State reference as someone who was born and raised in Michigan. So we'll have to all collectively forgive Kofi for his little delusional thinking right now. But just remember that the substance of this presentation was absolutely fantastic. Kofi, as usual, you're a great presenter, but you got to work on that finish. I think the wrap just needs to get
I'll try to work on that.
Okay. Well, again, just in all seriousness, great presentation today, Kofi, and thank you, Admin Advantage team as well. And also a big thank you to the Beat the GMAT community. I know this is crunch time for many of you in the admissions process. Round 1 is coming up. So we really appreciate your time this evening, and hopefully you got some great information to help you as a non-traditional candidate. All that being said, we look forward to seeing you at a future event, and best of luck in your admissions this season. All the best.